think you didn't want to do it. There's no energy. That shit drains your energy. If you're a creative, the business side of the thing drains your energy. It absolutely kills you. Even to this day, I'll go into a board meeting and after 15 minutes, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm done. I'm asleep. But I could sit in Mike's room and design for 12 hours straight with him.
How much as a creative and a creative founder do you have to stay in touch with the business side of things though? Like you spoke about the boardroom.
Yeah.
Do you still kind of need to know what's going on?
I like to, yeah.
Okay.
I love to know as much as I can. But as well, I think you should keep things away from yourself because it will inflict you with, even if it's like negative things. I think especially if you're so focused on building this next collection or whatever it is, if you're hearing negative feedback about some kind of product that's not working or something in the business that's not working, that affects what you're doing there. So I think trying to divide them two things is crucial. And I did that with Mike from the get-go because I knew that like negativity and like feedback loops on things that weren't great wasn't good for him when he's designing. So I kind of kept him just like strictly to design. But obviously we'd give him facts and figures and numbers and stuff like that, but try and keep him out of it as much as they can.
What was your hardest day?
I remember we got a letter from a company also called Represent in Europe telling us that we were basically done. And that was the worst day in the business. Yeah.
What did the letter say?
Just said like that they owned the trademark in Europe and they were just going to take us for everything we had. We couldn't carry on trading.
They wanted all of your money?
More than what we had. And that was in that same period, that 2018 to 20, where we were just like, every day we were waiting for responses, and every day it was like waking up and thinking, fuck, like, is it all over today? Is it all over tomorrow? Can we do what we want to do? Is this even our business anymore? Do we even own what we're doing? And like, there was only really me, Mike and James that knew about this, that was going on, because I didn't want to put it out to anyone. Didn't want anyone in the business to know like this was happening, or even my family. And it really fucking like restricted us with everything we did, every decision we made, every garment we sold. So that was included in that really dark period.
They presumably owned the trademark that you were using. So you had called yourself Represent, mm-hmm. but someone else owned the trademark for Europe.
Yeah.
And you didn't realize that at the time?
We thought we owned it because we had the UK IP, and all over the rest of the world, and there was this dormant, we thought it was dormant, but apparently it was selling clothing in section 25 or whatever. Section
25 is like the clothing category of a trademark.
Yeah.
Right.
And at first we thought, all right, we'll be able to figure this out. Let's get some lawyers and we'll go into it in a certain way and approach it like this. And it was just constantly like, no.
They weren't willing to.
Nothing. And that was the devil that woke you up every night. But I used that as like, I guess again, it's that chip on the shoulder thing. I kind of used it as that. And I realized that like we had to do so much and make so much of the brand that we didn't want to give it up, and that when the time came to it and he gave in and he wanted to take money, we had the money to be able to do it.
This sort of dark period between 2018 and sort of 2020, did that cause it, or was that just on top of it?
That was the icing on the cake. Yeah.
Right. So the business is stagnant, and then you get this letter through, someone wants to take everything you have.
And we spent so many months like just sat in the back office, just figuring out what we're going to recall the brand, how we're going to rebrand it, and like what it meant if it was not Represent anymore. And we couldn't post anything on social media. So it was like, we can't show this guy that the brand does well, or we're making any money, because then he'll want more and he'll start seeing all these other things. And we were so in our own heads about it. And like all the advice from lawyers was just always bad news. But eventually we got him to come up with a figure that he wanted for it. And I remember I think it was March 2020, we ended up like signing and getting our name back.
He wanted millions.
Yeah.
You said the lawyers were giving you bad news. What were they saying?
It just like they wouldn't respond for 3 months.
The lawyers?
No, not the lawyers. His lawyers.
Okay, his lawyers. Okay, so he was.
And then they'd respond on the last day of like this 3-month period. But you'd be in the car going to like Portugal to find out if this production's ready, and you'd get this long email and your heart would just drop and you'd be like, oh, what's going to get said? And then we'd go back to the office and sit there again and try and rethink of another name and then respond to him within a few days, and then it'd be another 3 months. So there was just this dark cloud above our heads all the time.
When you say dark cloud, what does the dark cloud feel like? Fly on the wall again.
Yeah, just you not being able to be yourself with everything you do. Every decision you make, whether it's buying a fucking sandwich from the shop, it's like, that's not your money to buy that sandwich because someone else owns the name where you're making that money. It'd like get you like that.
Did it interfere with your sleep, your mental health?
Everything. But like I said earlier, it also became this driving force where like I'd use it as a thing where it was like, I know this probably sounds so stupid, but like I'd just got started running in 2020 and I was like, I'm going to go out and run 15k. And if I stop, that's like him coming for us, you know? It's like, I have to do it. I have to win at everything we do, whether it's just a run or it's a design selling or whatever it is. Like, you cannot stop now.
Can't be easy going through that with your brother as well, because you're going to both be somewhat protective of each other, I imagine. And if there's that dark cloud hanging over both of you at the same time, it's...
It ruined both of us. It ruined the way he designed it. Yeah, everything.
And then so eventually you get a breakthrough and this guy agrees to a figure. And at the time, millions and millions of pounds. If you're making 6 or 7 million in the business and you're saying it's not really profitable, I'm guessing the money wasn't in the bank to send this guy millions of pounds.
No, but the deal went through in 2020 when we were really like pushing forward and doing everything we could so that when that thing happened, we had enough money for it.
How do you feel about him, this guy that sent you that letter?
Up until then, just hate, just absolute hate, because we were a bunch of young guys that were trying to build this business, and we had 20 employees at the time that we'd probably have to lay off, and we'd lose all the money and we'd be in debt for the rest of our lives or whatever, just because he decided that he wanted to use that name to sell nothing. Basically wasn't selling anything. So yeah, up until that day I was really upset about it, but after it I kind of just realized that it is what it is and that's how things go. And when I look back at it now, it really fucking catapulted the business, because that's when we came out of our shell, and that's when we started really like building this brand into a lifestyle and not just t-shirts on the floor on an Instagram page.
Did your parents know?
Yeah.
That you were going through that?
Yeah, a little bit.
How did
I
they
wouldn't
feel
tell them the full extent, but
why?
Just because I don't like putting pressure on other people, especially when it's not going to affect their lives as such at the time. But yeah, we would go to my mum and dad's every weekend, and like it would always be a subject that came up. Like, has he replied yet? Has he responded? Like, have you heard anything? It's just like, yeah, it fucked us.
How'd you deal with that? Because you're a young guy. I remember the first time in business where I experienced anxiety. I thought anxiety was something that happens to other people.
Yeah.
And then I remember the day very clearly where I had to let the managing director in our New York office go. I had to fire him.
Right.
And I was sat in my apartment in Manchester thinking about that flight tomorrow, where I'd asked this person to come and meet me for a coffee. And I was just like riddled with anxiety for the first time ever. I was like, this is what people talk about when they're talking about mental health. This is it. It's happening to me. I'm invincible, but it's suddenly happening to me. Obviously, as it always goes, it wasn't as bad as I imagined, but it's the imagination that haunts you.
Yeah, imagination is 95% of it, isn't it?
Have you experienced that before?
Mental health, I always struggle when people ask me about this, because no, not really. I've always been pretty solid on where I want to go, who I want to be, what I want to do, and just stuck to a plan. Anxiety, that period, yeah, that caused me anxiety, but not to an extent where it was like crippling.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I kind of enjoy the bits of anxiety I get because you learn from it, right? Like you going into that meeting and telling him you're going to get fired. Once that's done, you have that relief. And then, you know, next time you do it, this is how it goes. So you lose that 95% of anxiety that happens before it, or you lose a little bit of it.
Yeah, you will.
I get really anxious going onto podcasts. Like the past few days, I've been really anxious coming on here. And I've done 100 of them before. So you never lose it, but...
How'd you cope with it?
Just being prepared as much as you can for whatever that thing is. So if that is you going to fire someone, you've got to know the reasons why you're firing them, like where they can go, what's going to be best for them, what's going to be best for you, and just going into it like that. And then there's nothing really that can happen within that meeting then that can go wrong, I think. And I think that kind of clears the anxiety.
On the brand, you know, you've gone through a bit of a transition, as you said. The brand was stagnant at one point, and then it took off again when you made a lot of sort of operational changes and sort of changes to the business model. But at the heart of the brand, there was always something special, you know, to even be at 6 million revenue. And I remember back when I first discovered Represent, and for anyone that doesn't know, it's basically the only thing I wear. So like, if you ever see me out or on stage or whatever, I'm wearing Represent head to toe. I mean, I wear this. I usually don't wear this on the podcast, but when I'm not on the podcast, it's the only thing I'm wearing. And the 24/7 pants that you made are the only pants that I wear. Everyone knows that. Like, you know, I don't actually have another pair of pants.
Love that.
Like, that's all I wear. Because there's something, when I discovered the brand, there was always something special about it. And it's hard to explain, right? And when you observe the brand, it's clearly turned into a bit of a cult.
Right.
A good cult. No one's getting murdered. It's a good cult. But what is that thing that the brand always had?
Oh, that's hard. That's a hard question.
It's really hard.
I think it's the fact that it's like two brothers that are from Manchester that don't really belong in fashion have come up and done this really cool thing where they're proving that we don't need to just follow the rule book and we can do whatever we want to do and sell whatever we want to sell. And like, it's still, even though it's a huge brand now, it's still like a small thing where like the owners club for existence, like,
which is like one range within it.
One range within it where like you see someone else in an owners club hoodie, like you see them two guys nod at each other and it's like, yeah, you're part of something. Like we've kind of built this community that it stems from the people that are in the business, but it's so much bigger and it's on a global scale, but it's still like pretty small. And it's a family business, right? It's run by two brothers and everyone within the business feels like family. And when you buy a piece of that product, we're giving them way more than what they expect. Like one of my main things is like quality, and I want the customer to think, I follow these guys, kind of cool, I might try a hoodie, and they get way more than they expect. And that's when like they become part of that cult.
You're exceeding their expectations.
Exceeding their expectations way more than what they thought it would.
But for you to exceed my expectations, there must be something going on in the office that isn't going on in the other fashion brands' offices.
Yeah.
And what is that thing that's happening at Represent that's probably not happening at your competitor's place?
I think it's my innate desire to just be the best. However we show up, whether it's a pop-up, whether it's a run club, whether it's the feel of a garment or the delivery saying it's going to take 3 days and it takes 1 day. I think it's just my innate desire to just really be the best at how we show up as a brand.
Exhausting. Because the reason why people don't do that is because it's easier to cut the corner.
Right.
It's easier to send it 3 days. It's easier to not really care about the quality.
Of course, but like it's so personal to us and it's all we wear and it's all we obsess over every day. So it's got to be good.
What do people not see in terms of the effort that goes into the work? Like, between you and your brother Michael, what is it that people don't see?
They don't see Mike enough.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to get him to come out more with like how he does things and his process and stuff. But just like with him, you're seeing a guy that is in a room designing all day, every day with his graphics team. And it's not just him, it's the full scale of the business, the logistics, the production, the garment techs, the guys that are designing all the actual garments, and like the content team, like all of them are so bought into it. And everyone we bring up to the office, whether it's a store or another brand or whatever, like they're fucking blown away. No one can believe what's going on in there. And it's this ecosystem that's been built by Spenny and us as leaders and really like bled this mission into everyone that's in there, that like we're creating something that's going to